So this is the new Amazfit Helio Band or Helio Band, and a lot of people have compared this to the Whoop, saying it is a Whoop killer, a Whoop killer, and a Whoop killer. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who has used a Whoop band for way too long, it is not a Whoop killer. But that does not mean this is not good, because it is good, but it doesn't really compare to the Whoop in the same way a lot of people think it does. And of course, the big ticket item here being the fact that this cost a mere 99 bucks with no subscription fees at all. In fact, everything I will show you in this review will require no subscription whatsoever. It is purely what is included in the $99 level. So I'm going to dive into how this thing works from start to finish, the Helio Band, as well as the core areas that it differs from the Whoop Band, so you can kind of figure out which one is the best option for you. Oh, and I don't have any sort of kickback scheme with Whoop or Amazfit. I don't care what the heck you buy as long as you're happy with it. So the very first thing to know about this thing is it is tiny. It is super lightweight. It looks about the same size as a Whoop Band, so side by side right here, but this is considerably lighter. It's about 20 or so grams compared to roughly the 30 grams for the MG or the 5.0 Whoop bands. In the case of the Amazfit Band, it claims about 10 days of battery life, and that has been spot on for me. Likewise, the Whoop Band claims 14 days, and that also has been incredibly spot on as well. Now, the charging puck for the Amazfit Band is this tiny little thing. It's like 3 pennies worth stacked on top of each other. I promise you were going to lose this. You should just glue an air tag to the bottom of it, because that's the only chance you have of finding this thing again. It just uses a USB-C port plug that you plug in there and you're good to go. That part works great. Now, when it comes to the band itself, this is probably the key difference right now, but it's going to change really soon. So as of launch, there's only this wristband right here in one size, and it doesn't like expand at all. So when you put it on, you really have to like hold this end tight or just simply falls apart. But otherwise, it is super comfortable. I've had no problems wearing it, at sleep and workouts and all that kind of stuff. It's great. But it is missing a bicep band like you see here on the Whoop side of things that you can buy extra, at least from Amazfit. But the good news is because Amazfit uses a standard connector, unlike Whoop, you can go ahead just on Amazon and for 10 bucks pick up a bicep band for it. So Amazon US has them. I've yet to find the same on any of the Amazon EU properties, but the option is there if you want it, and it's at least super cheap and easy. So then the last piece of hardware is, of course, this optical heart rate sensor that you see right there on the bottom. This is on 24/7. It's going to go ahead and measure your heart rate. It's going to automatically detect workouts, though not that well, as we'll talk about in just a second, and otherwise track all of your vitals. So it's going to include things like sleep, as well as their attempt at sleep apnea tracking, sleep stages, phases, again, heart rate, continuous stuff. All that's going to happen just as you would expect. In fact, if you look at the settings that you see right there or here somewhere on the screen, you can even turn on heart rate broadcasting. So you can do Bluetooth broadcasting of this. So you can pair it up to, for example, a Peloton bike or the Strava app or anything else that you want that's an app that you want heart rate data from. You can do that from this band as well. You can also do that on the Whoop band, same kind of thing. And hey, just a quick note, if you are finding this video interesting and useful, just simply watch it all the way through. That is the only thing the YouTube gods care about and the only thing that helps fight against clickbait and clickbait titles. From there, we get into some of the more basic settings I just want to very briefly cover. You can see kind of the settings screen right there. One of those things is the vibration alarm. I actually even used it this morning for waking up, and it did wake me up just fine. It's not as strong as some of their competitors in the watch space, but it does the trick. You can go ahead and set daily alarms or other scheduled alarms that you see right there on the screenshot as well, which then ultimately takes us to the main screen that you would see on your phone. And this is a screen right here. This is your overview page and the core thing that you look at when you pull this open, because again, this does not have any sort of screen on it. This is just simply a little band with an optical heart rate sensor that you wear on your wrist that allows you to see core metrics. And so there's 3 core metrics that Amazfit is focused on here. Number 1 is your sleep score that you see on the left-hand side there. Number 2 is the Biocharge. Think of that like in the Garmin World Body Battery, for example, or the same daily readiness or readiness score that you would see from a Fitbit device, etc. And on the right side of that is your exertion. That is how much workout-ish stuff that you've done that day. Now, exertion is automatically determined using the automatic workout detection algorithm, and it basically will create these automatic events. I'm using automatic a lot here because it's just like Amazfit does, and it does a lot of these events throughout the day, up to 100%. This is sort of the first problem I have with this, is that the 100% level is your exertion for the day, and that can happen pretty quickly through the automatic detection of exercises, which isn't always real. So just for fun, here is one day of all these automatic workout detections. Now, these are like me doing the dishes, me walking around the yard, me like literally doing nothing of a high heart rate variety in a lot of these cases, just simply detects things and it says you're doing a workout. and it spits them up there. You can change the sensitivity here. I played with this a little bit, but I haven't figured out a huge pattern to changing this and what it actually detects behind the scenes. By default, it's standard, but it doesn't tell you what happens if you go to low or high. Those are like completely nebulous in terms of what they actually do behind the scenes. And notice they all say A activity. There's no like actual proper categorization. That there is a massive difference to Whoop. So Whoop has automatic detection as well, but it's really, really good at it. I have plenty of complaints about Whoop, like pricing and changing their mind on things and a whole lot of things. But their automatic workout detection is spot on. Now, it's going to detect things that are not a true like workout per se. For example, if you're gardening, Whoop will detect gardening if you're doing that at a high enough intensity to think it's a workout, because that's what your heart rate is doing. And I'm okay with that. It's super impressive versus Amazfit is just like, you did something, maybe here's a notification. The problem with the Amazfit is that exertion score tops out at 100% and you can't go beyond it. But you can see on this chart right there, 218 out of 38 for the exertion for the day. So I'm clearly able to accumulate more exertion load, but just never shows more than 100%, which again is weird. It should show, you know, whatever this is, like 300, 500%, I don't know. Whatever the math is there, it should show that. Now, Whoop has its own weirdness. They have this theoretical maximum of 22 from a training load standpoint, and you can't get beyond that no matter how close you get to it. But to get to 22 requires a lot of intensity for a long period of time, right? We're talking like well beyond a marathon. We're talking like a 8 to 14 hour day at relatively high heart rates to get close. And so it's not as much of a problem as the exertion score here, which I can hit pretty much every single day. So those are the core 3 things, but there's actually a lot of other metrics behind the scenes that's gathering. Here's a complete list of them right there. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. You got your sleep metrics, your heart rate metrics, including heart rate variability. You have your steps, your calories, your stress, your PAI, which is kind of a metric of activity of sorts. And you have, of course, the amazing ones we talked about, like your biocharge and whatnot. You also have at the bottom your training load and status that we'll get to in just a second. So looking at the sleep bits here, it's done a really good job of tracking my sleep in terms of the time I went to sleep and the time I woke up. I've had no problems with that at all. You can see here's some example days where I've compared it against a bunch of other devices across the board. And by and large, things are pretty good. As with the case of most wearables, every once in a while you get a slight difference between those wearables on the time I went to sleep and time I woke up, but most of these are pretty darn close. Likewise for heart rate variability, so that is the measuring the time between the beats there, you can see these are very close as well. This is just one night, and you can see they're all within a couple milliseconds, so good job there on the overall average. And then for sleep scores, which is super nebulous across the board as to how companies define that, they're here, right? For this particular night, this was not a great night of sleep in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. So I would say the Amazfit's band of 78% was a bit generous. Likewise, I'd say the Oura Ring 62% was probably a bit pessimistic. I would say it's kind of in the middle there somewhere, but overall it's in the general range of things. Amazfit will also look at those sleep scores and say, hey, there might be something off about that, which is kind of funny because last night, for example, I had a sleep score of 80, and it said at the bottom, daily sleep insight. I noticed, it's using like a human, I noticed a slower heart rate drop last night. Did you drink alcohol, eat, or exercise late before bed? No, I did none of those things, but I appreciate you thinking I might have. In any case, that drives right into Biocharge, the second of those big ticket items on that home screen there. And the way Biocharge works is that you recharge your internal battery, if you will, at night while you sleep. And then in the morning when you wake up, that internal battery will slowly go down based on activities you do. So for example, this morning I did like a 90-minute ride biking the kids to school on the cargo bike. That wasn't incredibly high intensity, but it also wasn't not high intensity. I mean, it's like 90 degrees out and there's 3 kids with 1,000 feet of elevation gain. So yeah, there was some intensity involved. So that then degrades my biocharge for the day. I can regain biocharge by taking a nap or just doing something relaxing for a long period of time, but ultimately it is sleep that drives it. Now, like their competitors with body battery, there are some caveats when you get down really, really low. And so I've seen a number of cases where Biocharge will bottom out to, you know, basically 0% or 5 is the lowest unit that I've ever seen here. It seems like that's their artificial floor. And that means that when you start doing activities or workouts, it'll basically just give you like no value. So I get no Biocharge reduction for doing a hard workout, even I'm already at 5. And this feels like the general gist with the Amazfit in my reviews over the years is that some of the sciencey things just skip the science part of sciencey, right? It's just kind of like They threw it at the wall and they said, yeah, good enough, and that's that. Let me just kind of a very simple comparison side by side between Amazfit and Whoop at this point before we get into the workout portions on this one day right here. You can see those two screens. In the case of sleep, it is 71 for the Amazfit, 82% for Whoop. The Biocharge level is a body battery. Whoop doesn't really have that exactly. They have recovery, but it's not really the same thing. Whoop's recovery is more about what happens when you woke up that morning versus Biocharge is moving throughout the day. There are pros and cons to those, but they are different metrics measuring different things. And then the last category is Exertion, which is roughly equivalent to Whoop strain. In the case of Whoop, it's going to move correctly throughout the day. I disagree with how they top out, but that we'll set that aside for a different thing. Versus Amazfit's topping at 100% by like the time I'm done with breakfast just doesn't make much sense. But it's interesting then to see how it assigns those Exertion scores. So on this one day right here, I did both a run midday, nothing crazy. It was like a, I don't know, 30 some odd minute run that it miscategorized as 49 minutes, but whatever. It was a trail run of sorts. And I also did a trainer ride later on. That was roughly like 42-ish minutes that it categorized as 48 minutes. Fine, it's close enough. You can see the recovery portion where it drops down at the end there is pulled into it as opposed to being separate. Whoop does a really good job at slicing it exactly, like crazy exactly every time. Amazfit is like, yeah, close enough. So up top there is that train ride, which only had a -2 biocharge impact because it was getting really close to the bottom, so it decided it couldn't put me in the negative. And then at the very bottom of the list there is the lunchtime run in -25. Doesn't make a ton of sense. These should be much closer activities. In any case, setting that aside, the next thing we have is training status, or basically training load. So each activity is given a training load number. You see that right here in the corner of the activity. And then from there, it goes into a total training load bucket. Very similar to what you'd find on a Garmin device or Polar, Coros, etc. in terms of that training load accumulation. So you can see my training load number right there, 1335, and it's saying it's too high for my norms. Yeah, that's fine. And then you see my 7-day there, and you can do 28-day and so on down the list, and they'll pull that data in. That is good because that's much more akin to what you'd see from a Garmin device than a Whoop device. Whoop's training load is this, again, kind of weirdish maximum load each day versus the rest of the industry has training load much more aligned to these higher scores that you see there, where there is no cap on your training load. Your training load can be as high as you darn well want because the human body is capable of doing crazy things, and therefore it's hard to know what the cap is for any given person. At this point though, the training load is what it is and isn't really accounted for in anything else, which is really a shame, and the biggest reason, the single biggest reason why this is not a Whoop competitor directly. This instead is something like a Fitbit Charge 6. This is literally a Fitbit Charge 6, like from a feature standpoint under the cover, minus the screen. Like if you were to compare those side by side on paper spec wise, this would align perfectly to that. But it doesn't really align to Whoop does for those two core reasons. One, it's not really looking at your training load when it talks about your total scores per day. It's looking at your activity, so steps and things like that, but not really training load. And then two, it's just not that good at the automatic workout categorization. Those are the two core reasons why it is not a Whoop killer per se. It's just measuring different things. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because there's still two more things to note here. Number one, you can do manual workout tracking. So if you want to turn off automatic exercise stuff, you can do that. Then you have to manually track it, which means you take out your phone, you choose a workout profile like you see on the screen right there, and then you go ahead and start that. And you can even include the GPS with that as well, and then upload it to Strava, etc. You can see here my bike ride this morning, I did that and tracked that whole thing, which then gets to like the heart rate side of it and accuracy. Accuracy on this has been very, very good. Just to run through a few quick examples, but you can find my written review down below if you want to. Here is the trail run I did. It was basically spot on, even being the Garmin Venue X1 in one category. Then we've got this outdoor ride you can see right there. Again, very, very close to the heart rate strap, also beating the Venue X1. The Venue X1 had like a bad week in there. It seems to be better now, but it was not good that particular week. And then we have another here, a indoor trainer ride. Again, spot on. There was one brief moment where you see a drop out there. I had just adjusted the strap and then it fell off and the whole thing. So don't judge the optical heart rate sensor of the strap when it's on the ground for that brief moment there. But otherwise, very, very good across the board. And this matches all of my workouts. Like super impressive job on the optical heart rate sensor. And by and large, if I look at Whoop, it's getting basically the same sort of thing across the board. Whoop has a couple more quirks when it comes to really high intensity things that doesn't seem to track as well in my testing over many years. But on the whole, Whoop's optical heart rate sensor accuracy has improved quite a bit in the last few years. So ultimately, here's the thing. This thing, the Amazfit Band, costs $99, right? The Whoop starts at roughly 200 bucks, including roughly a year of subscription, and then you pay another $200+ each year for that, versus there's no subscription cost here. Nothing I've shown requires a subscription in any way, shape, or form. But it's also not doing the same things as Whoop and not doing them as well when it comes to the software side of things, which has always been Amazfit's problem. They make, generally speaking, really good hardware, and then the software has always seemed to be an afterthought. Now, if you don't care as much about those training load bits and you want this as basically a screenless Fitbit, this is a great screenless Fitbit. It's also a good job at tracking the training load pieces if you were to be a bit more precise about when you started those workouts. It does a good job of that too, just without automatically doing it well. So for some people, they'll say, you know what, for 99 bucks, absolutely, I'm happy with that. Others will say, you know what, I just want it to all work and be kind of easy to use and properly track my workouts and properly track all that stuff. Then you're probably going to end up with the Whoop, or at least until we see Polar and their offering coming in September. They announced back a few weeks ago that they will move their Polar 360 from the business side into the consumer realm in some way, shape, or form. What the name will be is unclear. We know we'll not have subscription, but we don't know what the price is. So that could also be an offering as well. But the point being, in the meantime, the Amazfit strap is very, very good. But all the YouTube clickbait about Whoop Killer stuff, it's just clickbait. Whoop Killer is like the most popular form of YouTube fitness clickbait out there. And unfortunately, that's just where we stand today. With that, thanks for watching. Hope you have a good one.